Mr. Garner, which is also the Chief Operating Officer of First Digital Trust, which is a trust company who is actually giving the custodian service for the digital asset. And can you introduce your company and also service, and also including your company's mission and vision?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So my name is Gunnar. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for First Digital Trust. First Digital Trust is a Hong Kong-based public trust company. And trust companies in Hong Kong are essentially non-bank financial institutions. And the MCM group kindly have asked me today to share a little bit about my personal experience and our company's experience, how we have navigated through the COVID situation, and what has been our strategy. Our company is headquartered in Hong Kong. As I mentioned, we are a licensed financial institution. And in terms of our clients, our primary focus is actually primarily on B2B clients. And what that essentially means is that we are servicing many of the industry players, whether they're wallet providers, money service businesses, trading platforms, exchanges, or token issuers. For people that are familiar with blockchain and all of these industries. But we act as a B2B provider. We provide financial services, we provide financial technology, and we provide the infrastructure to the whole technology industry. In terms of what we do, there are a few core areas that we focus on. We hold our clients' assets. We also provide settlement and clearing services when it comes to movement of money and assets and all kinds of financial instruments. And we also provide trustee and fiduciary services. In many cases, people might not be familiar with First Digital Trust on a retail level, as we are not a retail service provider. But many of the digital apps that interact with banking system in one way or another are using our services. So you might be using, let's say, a money transfer app, and you might even not be knowing that we are powering some of the solutions behind the scenes. I'll keep the first slides short and sweet, but I think the main point is today's topic is how to digitize. And where I tried to bring my experience is that the digital industry is not new when it comes to banking and financial services. Financial services industry has been digitizing for the past 10 years. And later on, I'll share a little bit about what our experience has been and what the impact has been. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gunnar. So question this, how is your company doing during the COVID-19, and what is your expectation towards the post-MCO era? I would like to actually invite Mr. Gunnar to actually share with us about this topic first.
Sure. Thank you. So I guess a good point to start here is sort of where I left off before, is that the financial industry has been digitizing for years already. And what you have seen globally is actually the financial industry is probably the less hit by this whole COVID situation. And one of the reasons is that companies in this space have been heavily investing into digitalization. So people are not going to banks that much anymore in person, and almost everybody can do their transactions online. And these are sort of just the tip of the iceberg of this industry. So overall, if you ask what has been the impact, I would say the impact has actually been quite small or minimal. Where we have seen interesting trends really is that in a situation of uncertainty, the markets usually tend to go haywire, and there tends to be a lot of volatility in the markets. But anybody that's providing services to the whole financial industry globally is benefiting from that. So in terms of, if you look at our revenues and if you look at our operations, we actually have never been so busy before, because people are moving assets from one asset class to another, and there's just a lot of transactions happening. And ultimately, that's good for the bottom line, because in our space, every transaction generates revenue, and in that sense, it has been good. A few other areas that I also wanted to look at is maybe what have been the challenges. It's not all rosy. It's been quite an interesting time, actually. I think where we faced challenges before was to get our staff and our internal team members to use technology. We're very good at getting our clients to implement technology, but quite often internally, if you're a big organization, you still have people that are quite resistant, and if you don't have a really push for that, it's difficult to get technology in place internally. So every business owner that wants to digitize has to think about that, really. What COVID has really done for us, and I think for a lot of the companies, is the situation has essentially forced the people to use alternative means, since everybody has to work from home. So even simple things like using Zoom for the calls, video calls, using Teams and all these messaging apps. What was very difficult to do before was to get staff to use it, because it's mainly a habitual thing. But now, because of the situation and because there was no other alternative, we've seen really an uptick and uptake in use of these platforms. And as we start moving back to the offices, and as we start working from the offices again, I think this is something that will stick around for a while. So there has been an upside in terms of technology adaptation, and that's always been a challenge. But I hope really that there are some new patterns, some new habits formed here. Another thing that I would say was a bit challenging is that this time is a very good time to have a test of your recovery plans, disaster recovery plans, and emergency plans. It's very common for companies, for example, in the US and Europe, to have disaster recovery plans in place. But from my own experience, I know that many companies in Asia they don't tend to do these things. And for us, fortunately, we had a disaster recovery plan in place, and that was essentially executed when the virus situation escalated, when the travel stopped, when people had to work from home. We had computers ready, we had plans how to secure client data, and while still allowing people to work from home. There are some sacrifices that we had to make in terms of limiting people's access, but it wasn't that difficult. So this is an important lesson, sort of as an operating person, that I learned is the time investment that you make into having disaster recoveries in place might seem burdensome when everything is okay, but when really things go wrong, disaster recovery plans are extremely important. And finally, what we also learned is it's important to plan for what's next, essentially. And that doesn't mean general business strategy. It means that if there is disaster, then what's the next steps for the company, and those plans need to be made quite rapidly and quite fast. So let's look at some of the expectations that we have towards the post-MCO area. I think it's very helpful to look at it in sort of 4 phases. So the first step was obviously reaction. We knew COVID was out there. For us in Hong Kong, we saw what happened in China, and we were already quite comfortable with this. In Malaysia, for example, things were quite calm until, I believe it was till March. So that was the first sort of phase when the world in general started reacting to that. And that's past. We won't spend too much time on this today. That's already behind us. The next step was resilience, and resilience was where everybody had to adapt. We had to, work from home. We had to adapt to this new situation, and most of the people have been actually doing pretty great. In some countries, maybe even the government support hasn't been that great, but people still survive. And in these situations, people tend to get creative and find creative ways how to survive and how to be resilient. Again, this is already, like when we were talking about maybe Hong Kong or Malaysia, this is already starting to be behind us. Countries are opening up slowly. We're not back to the normal yet, but it's behind us. So let's not focus, maybe not so much on that, but let's focus on the lessons that we learned from that. And right now we are in the recovery mode, I would say, in most countries, Europe, Asia, difficult to say that for US, but definitely in Canada, and Latin America and Africa is still having issues with high number of cases. But overall, I would say we're in the recovery mode. And what that really means is we have to take the lessons we learned from this, and the recovery mode is the time when you want to take the action. Every crisis presents an opportunity, and you will be already too late after the crisis has been fully over, and all your competitors are already one leg up. So recovery is the time. If you haven't already started doing planning yet, this is the time to start doing planning. Look at the lessons, what we learned, and time to start taking action. And finally, after recovery, so let's look into the future. What comes after recovery, right? So that's what we are planning for. It's the new reality. It's the new normal. So as I mentioned, people had to face difficult challenges. They had to become more creative, find creative solutions to their problems, and maybe also adapt some new behaviors. Like I said, for example, communicating more with colleagues from, or business partners over, apps like Zoom, what we're using today. And I think this is the underlying theme. What is the new reality? I think a lot of these habits are going to be sticking with people. I heard somebody to say that it takes about 30 days to form a habit. Well, guess what? We're into this situation 90 days already. So there's large amounts of people, not only in Hong Kong or not only in Malaysia, that have formed these new habits. And as entrepreneurs or as business owners or anybody that's running a business, now is the time really to capitalize on that. That you have all of these people out there, and the smart business move is not to go out there to create a market, but to serve the existing market. So what I'm trying to say is the focus should be on how do you serve and how do you fulfill the needs of this new group of people globally that have formed all of these new habits. And I think some of the more specifics we're going to be answering in the private Q&A. But I think this is really the key message that I wanted to give all the entrepreneurs out there, and anybody that's considering maybe changing their business direction in this situation or taking new services to the market is think about what next. Think who's your target market, and don't wait to take action, because if you do, you will lose the first mover advantage essentially. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gunnar. I'm